who, again, you know, has done a really fantastic job this split. His pool has been expanded a little bit as well. He's got a lot of really good options. Varus going to be the final ban coming through.
Look at the mid lane bans, and Ryze is not among them. In fact, the Anivia kind of signaling, hey, yeah, we're picking the Ryze. We are going for it for Xiaohu. This has been both of these mid laners' most played champion across this split, and so they are very, very comfortable in that matchup. Getting that early for Xiaohu to give them a macro presence when things like Pantheon and Twisted Fate and a lot of these other, you know, typical macro counters are off the board is definitely a big turn of events. But as we talked about, bot lanes are available. Yunara Lulu could just be a slam here if you wanted to go for something strong in the 2v2. Bard, also something that's been banned out basically the whole series. One of Vampire's signature picks. Might not be quite as strong from a duo perspective, but certainly a good playmaker to have to counter the Ryze.
He has looked at times like Carrier on that champion, so we'll see if he can slam it one more time. The Ezreal available. They could always opt into that. You know, never want to give a guy like Gala Ezreal make a very large impact. HongQ may opt into this Aurora that he's been so good on. A 5-1 record on it. Listen, I would say go for it. Okay.
Great.
We haven't seen a Talia in some time, no?
It's starting to pop back up a little bit, but honestly, I've been begging for it to pop up more. This champion got buffed on this most recent patch, and it feels like nobody has realized that yet, that this champion has actually gotten really strong again with some of the changes to her kit and some of the buffs that she received. I've really been stunned that she's not completely returned to the meta. I think she's a fantastic answer to something like Ryze to open up the map, and I think HongQ on another macro threat that has a semi-global ultimate to open up the map, that's what he does at an elite level. Getting that as comfort to pair with the Bard is great. Ezreal as a safe champion on the bottom side to allow for their own playmaker to come through. The Hank has obviously been more of an enchanter player, but we have seen the Nico as well out of the Hank, and didn't look very good in that first game, but, you know, we're going to get a second shot at it here.
What's going to be so difficult for him to do in this game is that Vampire, known for playing a lot of Nico, being really excellent on that champion as well, is going to generally have a good idea of what the Hank is going to want to accomplish in these fights, and because of the Tempered Fate, could always try to snuff that out. Let's see what JDG pick up for AD carry. They don't wait too long. They'll pick up the Caitlyn with the Bard, which I think is an interesting choice. Lane power is certainly there, but Caitlyn is not an AD carry that I always feel comfortable about leaving alone.
Yeah, Caitlyn just puts so much pressure onto Ezreal in the early game that I do kind of understand where you're coming from. Ezreal can't really poke off that lane at all because of the lack of range advantage in his favor, so it's really difficult for him to play aggressive. It basically forces these supports out of lane, and basically what you're saying with this pick is that utilizing the pressure from the jungle, from whatever we pick, we're going to utilize that to win the early game rather than try to play towards bot side, because Caitlyn's just going to have that full pressure anyways. I kind of like this idea in isolation, especially considering that Gala has been so much better in lane than Elk. Kind of takes away a lot of options to be able to turn that around in the bot lane. But now I'm really expecting an aggressive jungler from JDG, something that's going to be very carry-oriented. That opens up some very interesting possibilities. We haven't seen a ton of other carries outside of Nefiri for JunJia throughout this split, but I think it almost necessitates it with this draft.
You can't pick it, though. It's gone. So what do we...
Yeah, you're right.
What are our carry options? Like, I don't know, man. I don't know who's going to be Carry Potter, Carry Underwood in this game. You got to figure out who is going to be the jungler to opt into. Let's see how many junglers are going to be left, right? Because Trundle is, you know, a champion that you don't often see flex, mostly a jungler, getting taken off the table. And Bessa, a champion that you could flex, could also take into the jungle, is a carry, fits that description. They say, get that out of here. I mean, I don't know at this point. We're like looking at like, hey man, let's go pull out a Viego, or let's go pull out a Lilia even. You can carry on that.
I think for me, honestly, the two champions that first come to mind, if you want to take away that can be aggressive, Olaf is on the board. Jed just played it a couple of times and would be really good for this comp. Kiana is also available. JunJia played it more last year than this year. I think Kiana would make the most amount of sense for this comp if you feel comfortable playing it. But again, JunJia's just not really shown a lot of proficiency on other carries this year in particular. So going to be really fascinating to see where he goes for. Yeah, I mean, the Skarner would be more setup, but you have plenty of setup. You need damage on this comp. I think you especially need proactivity out of the jungle. I would really, really not like the Skarner as much. It is a takeaway, and it's one of the stronger junglers that is left available. I just think from a comp perspective, you need something more aggressive to pair with this Talia, and I don't know if Skarner is that.
Well, now what are we going to get top lane for JDG? Because you are setting up Xiaoxu to be the guy who's going to carry you through the game. Perhaps if they lock in Jace maybe, just maybe, JDG go back to the Tryndamere top lane.
I mean, it would be something that they've shown that they can play. It would be very risky in this comp, but I honestly would like it. Again, it gives them a win condition. It's just not necessarily the win condition that I would love to play out. It gives them a huge side lane presence because you have that Bard that can roam everywhere. Talia, obviously with that semi-global, gives them options. But the Jace already is basically putting them on, you know, on notice. Like, what are you going to do to counter this? What are you going to do to stop Zika from getting this massive lead and being able to be a bigger pressure point than whatever you pick on the top side, especially if you lock in the Xin. Xin Rise is one of the scariest duos. Oh,
Jace jungle. We're going back
this
to
is
it.
Jace jungle.
Yeah, we're going back to the Jace jungle. Okay, this is something that we saw a lot in the early goings of the year that has essentially disappeared from the meta. But now with the return, we're seeing a lot of hovers. Zehen was a Xiaoxu special. Maybe, just maybe, this is the move here.
Honestly, I would have liked Zehen for JunJia if they wanted to go in that direction.
Yeah.
But yeah, for Xiaoxu, I think this makes a lot of sense with the comp that was drafted. I think this Zehen is actually incredibly strong in this particular comp. And what you're looking at is a draft that I think is really interesting. The way that Jace jungle ends up factoring into this is now you have even more pressure to spike in that mid game. You've already got a champion like Ezreal with the Nico engages that wants to be a little bit more proactive once that laning phase ends to make sure that Caitlyn can't get out of control. But if you're going to use Ryze Realm Warp with a Jace, you better make those plays happen. There's going to be a point in the game where that split push prowess can only really work if you have that massive advantage. And for JDG on the other side, while they also are a comp that maybe theoretically you would look at and see like early game pressure, I'm looking at that Caitlyn late item power spike as the one that's actually going to be more relevant after these supports start roaming and once that Zehen can really start getting online.
Couldn't agree more, Kman. I have some issues with this Weibo Gaming draft because I don't know how you're closing out on any of these kills. RCC is Rune Prison, Pop Blossom with Tangle Barbs, and, you know, whatever the heck Casante's doing to people, right? I just don't know how in the early game you are expected to convert on some kills. It feels like you're just priced into Shock Blast ganks, and that's it. And sure, you'll get some advantages off of that, but I don't know if there'll be enough to put Weibo Gaming over the top. It's certainly going to be an interesting composition to see them try and pilot here in this final game as they look to improve to 6 and 8 and try to improve themselves in the standings, trying to get up to that 5th place spot. It's going to take a little bit of a miracle, but it is still possible.
They need a miracle, but we already saw in game 1 that even when they're down, they are never out of any of these games, certainly of any of these series. They are the game 3 masters for a reason, and they get the chance to prove it here in this one.
Summoner's Rift for the final game of the day. JDG Weibo, let's do it. There are a couple of scenarios that occur with a Weibo 2-1 win. Not too many, so we can break them down for a second. If Weibo win this 2-1, an IG loss and an NIP loss, they go up to 5th. An IG and NIP 1-2 loss will get us a weird head-to-head, and then a 3-2 game score in the heads-up against NIP, so that'll get really weird. IG 2-0 win and NIP 0-2 loss will move Weibo to 6th and IG to 5th. An IG 2-0 win and NIP 1-2 loss will move IG to 5th. And then we'll have the Weibo Gaming and NIP weird tiebreak scenario with them being between 6th and 7th. So there is a lot going on here and a lot of moving parts if Weibo take this win.
I hate to say this on cast. I really do. I promise, Yanni. If we get a tiebreaker for 6th, 7th in 2026, that's an absolutely insane outcome. That is truly
you wouldn't be able to make it up. You can't make it up. We need this. I think we need this.
Yeah.
Mostly because Alk will lose his mind.
Very true. Very true. And now we're kind of hoping for that outcome, but it's not just Weibo who have something on the line in terms of standings here. JDG win this series. They're in a great spot to get 2nd in this split as well. And like I said earlier, that's a pretty big advantage for them. They get to choose their opponent right after BLG of the 4 teams that'll be, down, coming through the play-ins, and they'll also get to avoid the same side as BLG, which could theoretically be possible if they lose this series going down to 4th place. So kind of an important one for both of these teams to go out and win for playoff hopes.
Yeah, you want to try to avoid BLG for as long as you can, given the fact that they've played so well. If you have any hopes of trying to make it to the finals and make it to internationals, you're going to have to cross paths with them at some point. Weibo Gaming and JDG. Let's see what, if anything, we get out of this early game, because level 6 is when we really start to expect things to pop off, especially with these mid laners, I should say. Xiaoxu trying to put in as much pressure as he can onto Zika. Remember, he's been so good on this champion this year. It kind of fell out of the meta a little bit, but it is a great time to pick it here when you need a win.
Definitely the time to dominate and really make your mark. Again, we talked about Xiaoxu. He's been excellent throughout this entire split up until this point, has really evolved and pushed himself forward as one of the best top laners that we have in the LPL, and truly one of the best top laners in the world in terms of production so far this year. This can be a big gain for him to really cement that legacy, because he's a huge part of this team's damage. Again, Gala is going to be a big carry in the late game eventually on this Caitlyn, but we all know Caitlyn's graph is a U, right? Eventually in the mid game, you're just not going to have that same level of proactivity until you start hitting those 4th, 5th item power spikes. Really starting to get that full 100% crit online, and you can really start to push a lot of that damage through with that Caitlyn. Before you get there, it's going to be a little bit more difficult, and that's where Zehen really needs to step up and make those plays. One of the big things I'm going to be looking at for Weibo, you've got Jason Ezreal that kind of leads your mind into believing this is a, poke comp that has a lot of range and should be able to set up around these objectives. And while that is true, you got to make sure that you get there in the first place.
Yep. You got to get your feet set at these objectives. Be the first one there. Going to look out for those recall timers as things start to take shape. One thing that, you did touch upon the Caitlyn graph, the parabola, as we could call it, because it's just a U, is that you're missing a lot of damage in the composition outside of Xiaoxu at that mid-game point. HongQ is not really going to be providing damage at that point in the game. That being said, as the game goes on, if you are able to front to back, Taliyah does get pretty potent.
Oh,
hang on.
First
Weaver's
engage.
walled down. Jiejie forced a flash away. Really nice move there by JDG, moving everybody over to go and get position on this dragon.
Absolutely love that play from HongQ, mostly just because you hit level 6 first. You might as well take advantage of it. Ryze is going to be able to realm warp, and it's better to use your ability proactively than have to react to a Ryze. One of the things I will say about Taliyah moving forward, to touch upon your point, is that Taliyah can do a lot of damage. It's just a little bit more difficult for Taliyah to do a lot of damage, especially into a comp that has the range of Jace and Ezreal. It's definitely going to be much harder for her to position. But after the buffs, again, want to reiterate, this is not the same champion that we've seen throughout a majority of the spring split so far. She's much stronger on this current patch, and we're going to get the chance to see it here, hopefully, this game.
JunJia showing up to help his mid laner take his recall. No teleport available for HongQ, and because that Weaver's wall is down, he's kind of stuck here because they can't knock Xiaohu off the block in here in this mid lane and force him away. So HongQ has to constantly soak up these waves with no mana and needs to get a recall off soon. This means that Dragon was able to be started up by Weibo Gaming because JunJia showed up on the top side here. So despite the fact that JDG had the early possession of the river, Dragon will go to Weibo regardless.
Yeah, I mean, really, the timer to take Drake would have been right after the Weaver's wall, but unfortunately, because you don't capitalize, Vampire continues to roam on the Bard, and eventually bot lane 2v2 pressure just goes in favor of Elk and the Hank, and credit to them for being able to push that forward. That's why they're able to get that Dragon. It's not the only objective they're going to be looking at. I actually think Grubs are basically essential for Weibo's comp in order to play this as effectively as they want moving forward. They need to have that advantage in side lanes to play as aggressively as they want to around these river objectives, and if they can't get them, if they can't really set themselves up for that early skirmish that might need to happen near Grubs, I think the game does get more difficult from there.
Speaking of those Grubs, they'll be up in about a minute. A split push prowess from Xiaoxu going to really benefit from them, as well as Xiaohu. The two key split pushers of this game would be more than happy to get those. HongQ going to try to disrupt the recall here and to try to mess with Xiaohu's timings the same way that he did it to HongQ.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of pressure put on the mid lane already by JunJia. They've wanted to try and keep HongQ in a good spot, keep him healthy, and keep his lead. But now it's the bot lane who's going to be the focus, and how can the Hank could be overextended?
Uh-oh. Well, they've spotted out JunJia, the Hank. Gonna try and use the clone, but they were not fooled. The Impale is there, and first blood to Gala.
Perfectly played by JunJia. You got to make that first Impale count, and he absolutely did. That's the big advantage that you have over Jace, is that your ganks are going to be significantly more efficient. You really don't have a lot of great gank setup throughout both of these lanes unless Nico has a Pot Blossom available, but at level 5, there's just not a lot of easy ways to make that happen. A gold lead now generated once again for the 3rd game in a row. When it comes to Gala, he has been huge for JDG throughout this series, and in this game, he's once again going to have to be pretty important on the Caitlyn.
And now HongQ has that Weaver's Wall available, so you can go and make another play if you wanted to and really start to put the screws to Weibo Gaming. Gala has a pickaxe, 2 long swords as well. His auto attacks are hurting at this early point in the game.
They are definitely a problem. This is a really, really good start for JD Gaming, about a 1k gold lead, and they actually have prio over this river, as Weibo Gaming are kind of flying blind into a potential death bush here. Remember, they need grubs, so it's really important for them to set up around this objective.
All right, HongQ stopped his recall. It's very low on mana, but it was for a good cause. Jiejie, very low on HP right now. We'll see if JunJia wants to respond and try and push him off these jungle camps, but with the Hank and Xiaohu nearby, seems unlikely to happen. Grubs have been started up. JunJia's going to be able to take the 1. With teleports coming in from his solo laners, it could be more if they want.
Yeah, it could be more, but I don't even think they have to get more. Just a 9-3 from Weibo, I think, is really important this game. I think that's why JunJia was so comfortable taking that exchange. As long as he got 1, he was going to feel pretty good about that exchange overall. Being able to get more at this point, because the Jace has to back from that extra damage, is just icing on top of the cake. This has been a great early game from JDG. And that's kind of what Weibo needed. They needed to jump out to a pretty big lead here with the Jace and with the Ryze in particular in the mid lane. The fact that Taliyah has had full pressure, the fact that Jace has not been able to contest any of these objectives, definitely in favor right now of Weibo Gaming, or of JD Gaming, even if they do get one of these grubs.
Yeah, and you've got this double poke bot lane coming out of Weibo that hasn't garnered a lead for itself. It's in fact behind because of the kill that occurred. And Jiejie has been running around, farming up as much as possible. I don't know how much gold he's made off of his first strike, but it feels like he has not really been too active in terms of trying to deal damage to opponents. So we're really needing this Jace to make an impact. He's got his first item completed. You have to start getting down this poke damage. You have to set your feet at these objectives first, like we talked about earlier. A minute to this dragon. Let's take a look at Weibo's setup.
Absolutely. I mean, you're talking about now or never for Jace. You're absolutely right. But also, you've yet to use a Realm Warp, a single one throughout this entire game. Weaver's Wall has already been used to at least decent effect. And if you're not going to be utilizing that ult to get the Ryze or the Jace into these fights, it's going to be harder for him to find those engages. Expect that Realm Warp to be used very shortly around this major objective.
All right, here we go. A flash. Pop Blossom lands onto 2. Gala down to half HP. Temper Fate does not land, but the Impale onto the Hank. He's dead. Xiaohu looking to run down Vampire and Gala as they're stuck in the back of the pit, and they're starting to run out of space, but they have ways of getting out. Put in Rune Prison and taken down. Vampire forced to flash over the wall. Ends up being a 1-for-1 when the dust settles.
1-for-1 is a good trade here for Weibo. It looked like it was going to be a bit disastrous for them at the start, but so much was burned, killing the Nico before this fight because she is obviously the very consistent engage. Even Gala, stepping forward a little bit too far there, getting stuck in the pit, not having the net to be able to get himself over the wall. Definitely a bit of a problem, and a 1-for-1 trade that actually ends up very gold positive for Weibo. You've got about a 1k gold lead now on Jace. He's going to be, like you said, the most crucial member of the team. Still going to be waiting for those engage tools to come back up, but if you can follow through on Pop Blossom or Realm Warp, then the Jace can still have a big impact, and see if he wants to utilize that to potentially try and take this dragon.
He's got a pickaxe in his inventory, and this early in the game can really move the needle. So we'll see what the Weibo Gaming jungler is able to do when objectives are not up. The thing is, though, the objectives are still up because this dragon was not started up. Weibo Gaming get there first. It's just a matter of what they want to do. Do they want to try to sucker JDG in and try to land poke like you just saw the attempt here? We'll see if JDG elect to fall for the bait. They're feeling pretty confident about their team fight, it looks like, as JunJia leads the charge along with HongQ and Vampire to try to take some space away from Weibo Gaming. They have to try to find a way to link up. The Hank and Elk separated from Jiejie. Lands a Shock Blast, not a lot of damage. Ezreal ult takes Gala down to half. Tempered Fate is going to land onto the Nico. Dragon getting low, 1000 HP, secured by the Skarner. But bursted out and killed is the Hank. Vampire gets a second kill. Shock Blast does some damage, but you just don't have enough gas in the tank right now.
I mean, this is what I'm talking about in terms of plays that I just don't agree with. Weibo are in a place where they can set up and kind of plant their flag in the river, but instead they bait JDG to essentially do the same and, you know, take that river pressure back so that they can poke them out. But that poke is so much less effective when you are the one that has to go in to the enemy team. I just don't really like that mentality. The Hank is so squishy at this point. Didn't even get a Pop Blossom off in that fight, just instantly died after being CC chained down with the Tempered Fate coming out from the Bard. It's just a lot of mental misplays here from Weibo Gaming, and it does seem like some of their inexperience in these late game situations, or even early game situations, is coming back to bite them because they don't feel comfortable right now playing around this playmaker in the support position.
Yeah, it's very tough. There's a lot of desync there, and you know, this is what happens when you swap out your supports pretty consistently. They're on their third support of this year. We're not even done Split 2 regular season, and you have to wonder, if this continues, what's the plan for Weibo moving forward? If the Hank continues to struggle, are you going to keep him, right? He's a young kid, 19 years old, you know, gonna get valuable experience out of this, and I'm sure will be able to hopefully have a nice career for himself. But you know, Weibo Gaming, based on their team and the way they've built this team, it kind of feels like they're a win now type of team.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem for Weibo, it's not just, oh, is the Hank good enough, or oh, was Hong good enough? You can't develop good macro if you're constantly swapping out your support. You just can't.
Yeah.
Support is one of the most important positions to link up with the rest of your team on the map, and having 4 or 5 games for a player before you judge whether or not they are synergistic enough, it's just going to put you at such a massive disadvantage over every other team in the league. We're seeing it with teams like DN Supers over in the LCK as well, where you're just constantly swapping these macro positions in and out. You can never find consistency in your macro. I think the swaps have hurt Weibo more than anything. It doesn't even really matter who the player is. You just need to get that consistency and that synergy in, because right now, it feels like the team is constantly trying to find different playstyles every 2 weeks and reverting back to basically what every team was at the start of the year, trying to find their own playstyle.
I couldn't have said it better myself, Kman. I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head on what the issues with Weibo Gaming have been. Rift Herald is up and ready for any team to start it, and with all this pressure being exerted by JDG, it's only a matter of time before they're the ones to do it. HongQ, finally a CS lead over Xiaohu, has struggled a little bit in the first 2 games in lane, but this game never really had that much of a problem. Is off and running, hasn't really made too many plays with the Weaver's Wall, but has still made more plays with the Weaver's Wall than Xiaohu has made with the Realm War.
Which is staggering to me, because that's like the entire identity of the comp. Jiejie needs to be able to get into these fights and to be able to find the backline. Yes, you want to poke down before these fights start, but at some point you have to play these side lanes. JunJia, though, a little far forward, is still very tanky on the Skarner, though, so it might not even matter in the end here.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I mean, he took damage from Ezreal, he took damage from Jace, he took damage from Nico, and he's like half HP. And because he's a jungler, he gets to go farm his wolves and then go heal up a little bit, and then he's okay.
Look at this top wave while this is all happening, right? Like, HongQ is pushing this in. There's only 1 plate left up on the top side. They are doing a great job of pressuring that down and getting HongQ a 300 gold lead, even if Zika is pushing in on the bottom side here. They just have full lane priority, and they're likely going to use it to try and fight somewhere soon.
Next dragon coming up in about a minute. The 3rd dragon of the game with 1 apiece to each of these teams. And looking at the slate of champions, it is likely we may get a lot of dragons in this game, as we might have a lot of back and forth and keeping the game close until some of our champions like our Ryze and our Caitlyn on either side can hit critical mass. Herald has been started up here by JDG, as they are all well in position. JJ gonna just try to do what he can with some shock blasts over the wall. Doesn't really have a whole lot of damage to actually deal anything to JunJia. Now, doing stuff to Gala and HongQ, certainly fine. Hank is able to dodge out on a Tempered Fate, but he gets caught here. Half HP, flashes in, goes for HongQ, but gets taken down himself. And now it's JDG's time to turn it around. JunJia trying to drive around and maybe make a play happen here. Elk will shift over the wall. Xiaohu is on the wrong side of the track, separated from his team. It's a 4v3 with a Rift Herald down in the mid lane. Could use that to convert on a Dragon. And this means it's time for Zika to go all out on Xiaoxu, trying to force him away. No flash.
Yeah, Xiaohu is actually trying to collapse on this, but there's no Realm Warp. He's not going to get here in time, so they're just going to try and pull this wave. They're basically racing for this first tower as Dragon is spawned, but this is the biggest problem. Your entire gold lead, or at least gold neutrality right now for Weibo, is on Jace, and Jace is doing 0 damage in any of these fights. He has found no way to get onto any primary members of the backline, and Skarner is running the Rift. Once Hank goes in for a lot of these engages, he just dies instantly because there's no follow-up on the rest of this team. You can, criticize him for, getting bursted down, but he's at least trying to find proactive plays. The rest of this team is playing so scared and so passive, and they're just letting JDG take whatever fight they want. Now they get full control over this Dragon, and once again, as a poke comp, you are giving control of the river over to the enemy team.
It's just such a mishmash of what they want to be doing, right? Because they've got two champions that really want to poke in this Ezreal and this Jace, and then you got a Ryze who wants to wait until you get 2 items and then start causing havoc in some of these team fights. We haven't even seen an attempt of a Realm Warp Pop Blossom combo, which is one of the stronger combos that you can have with an eco.
I mean, it's insane, right? Like, there's not a ton you can even really talk about here. It just feels like Weibo are on the back foot. This is not a comp that they can justify staying really passive, not necessarily pushing their leads or advantages. This doesn't get easier in the game for them. You're going to eventually have to find your engage, and while, again, the gold lead isn't insurmountable just yet, all of it is on the Jace, who has yet to find any consistent fight or engage just yet. It's going to have to be soon.
Gala getting close to that Infinity Edge. He's got Gluttonous Greaves in the back pocket as well, trying to sustain through a lot of this poke. You're starting to see that the damage is there. Voltaic Cyclosorb is completed by Jiejie. He's on that 2-item spike. You've gotten a lot of gold for yourself with this poke. Now is the time to actually do something with it. Going to steal away a blue bar from JDG. That's a good start. But can we start converting on kills? There we go. Big poke coming through.
The poke is what really matters here. If you can continue to pressure these guys out of the mid lane and be able to start pushing this tower down, that is your way back in. The gold needs to go elsewhere on the map. It's all well and good for Jace to have a 1.5k gold lead. You need to start spreading that around to the Ryze, to the Ezreal. That's going to be their avenue back into this game to win some team fights. For now, they're doing a good job of pressuring their advantage, but again, they have to keep doing it. This is the part of the game where JDG are unquestionably at their weakest. They have to take advantage of it.
Not going to have a Dragon for quite some time, about 3 minutes and 20 seconds, so this does allow time for Xiaohu specifically to try and get this scaling up a little bit. You'll have, 8 stacks of the Rod of Ages. Maybe if you could delay a little bit longer, you could get to the full 10 stacks. Your tier items should be completed. Then you'll get to work on your Actualizer. That's what I'm really expecting Xiaohu to come alive, but I still would have expected some earlier Realm Warp plays happening. It feels like he's just kind of playing his own game and really has been doing so most of this series.
I mean, that's the thing, right? Ryze is going to be useful, but really only if you can get gold and, get onto priority targets. The more you let JDG essentially dictate the pace of this game, the harder it's going to be for that Ryze to get himself back in. And we're seeing that here onto Elk, as maybe not the target, as the Ezreal is maybe the most safe champion on the other side of the Rift. Both of the AD carries taking a bit of poke as we continue to fight over the mid wave here.
Yeah, honestly, just displaying dominance there. Just rolling right up to Elk. I'm going to smite you, and then walk away. It's sometimes you just got to aura farm. And JunJia has been aura farming at least in one game this series. In the battle of these junglers who have each earned a player of the game apiece. It is a 1.5k gold lead for Jiejie, as has been mentioned, but again, we're still not seeing much proactivity. The gold lead for Weibo, it doesn't feel very real right now, Kman.
It doesn't, mostly because it's on Jace, but I do want to point out, again, to give them a little bit of, you know, the benefit of the doubt here. This is the part of the game that they still win in, right? Like, you're expecting these fights to still be very positive for the Jace with 2 items. Xiaohu has now completed that Seraphs. That is a massive spike for the Rise in terms of being able to get out on the map and play more aggressive with some of those engages. It's going to be pretty difficult right now, specifically, for JDG to actually win some fights. I just need to see Weibo do something about it. One of the things I've been the most frustrated by in this game is they're not really controlling any of the fights that are taken. JDG is setting up around these objectives, and if Weibo gets anything in return, it's, you know, them being able to counter-punch JDG. I want to see Weibo on the front foot because we know they're good enough to actually find ways to start these exchanges with some of their playmaking tools.
Whatever algorithm is used to determine game win rates, say JDG about a 56% chance of winning from this point onward. But have they ever heard of the 2-item power spike that we talked about earlier after the draft was completed? Jiejie has it. He's had it for a little bit, but Elk has now completed his, and he's looking to build a 2nd-tier item on top of it as well. So he'll have an even later spike going on. Gala has his 2 items, now has some attack speed in the build as well. So this next dragon fight is really where the sparks and the fireworks are going to fly, Kman.
That's exactly it. 40 seconds on this Drake fight, and when you look at the bottom of your screen, do you see any sort of gray around any of the summoner spells? Because I don't. I think all of them are up throughout the entire game, and so this could be a very chaotic dragon fight if both teams want to commit to it. We'll see how much pressure both want to put in. It is so important for Weibo to get control over this river. I've been pushing that so much with this poke comp, but if ever is the time, now is the time for them to set up and get that vision control.
Big poke onto Gala. He doesn't have that much healing on the Golden Screeves yet. Elk is forced to shift away. JunJia unable to get closer. Gala still below half HP. Teleport coming in. It's Zika joining and getting this big shield as this dragon is now up. If Weibo Gaming win this fight, they could have the entire game in their hands moving forward. Teleport's going to be coming in. Xiaoxu is going to look to join. JDG looking to worm their way in, ace in the hole. Elk is not even close. Zika's shield is getting ripped down, but is finally down. They haven't actually stuck that much damage on him. Dragon, 1500 and lower, secured by Jiejie. What's the rest of the fight going to look like? Xiaohu taken very low. He's going to look to realm warp his way out of there. Gets his top laner out as well. JDG unable to close out on any kills.
Yeah, I understand the hesitation from JDG. Again, if you're ever scared of any point in the game, it's right now, but I thought that there was an angle for them to find a good engage if JunJia was just a little bit more aggressive. Unfortunately, he gets outsmited in that exchange, and that's huge for Weibo Gaming. Again, delaying that soul from coming online is really important. It's Chem Soul this game as well, which obviously benefits both teams immensely. Both of them being now at 2 dragons apiece does give Weibo an out in the later part of the game, even if we're worried about them getting outscaled. If you do give that Rise and that Ezreal, those extra stats, K'Sante is going to be a big problem to deal with. You have Engage with the Nico and with even the K'Sante or the Rise Realm Warp as well. There are plenty of tools back into the game, and Weibo once again are finally starting to find their footing and put their pedal to the metal.
And they're so strong right now, too. Jiejie was forced to flash away, but now this poke is really starting to land and stick. Comes that Weaver's wall. Elk is able to get over the wall. Xiaoxu looking to cause some problems in the backside of the fight, but now it's JunJia who's down to half HP. Shift onto HongQ. He's also at half. Shock Blast takes him very low, and now Weibo Gaming are the ones who are starting to have total control. This poke is really starting to stick.
Ask and I shall receive. We're finally starting to see the Jace wake up and pump out some damage in these fights as they look to pressure down this mid-tier 1.
Yep, and they're starting to be proactive, but it's Xiaoxu on the backside. Good deliverance to buffer, but he's in a lot of trouble. He didn't get his passive. He goes down. JunJia off to the side dealing with Xiaohu, but doesn't really have anything there. Zika going to find his way in. Ezreal a little low. Zika will be able to hop away when the dust settles. 1 for 1 once more.
You can see the angle. You can see the vision from Xiaoxu in that fight. You can see where he's like, if I can just get that passive up, then I'm going to be in a really good spot. Unfortunately, he is not able to get it, so he does trade his life. But luckily, they're actually able to kill the Jace on the back end of that fight, which is a massive gold injection over to JDG. We're going to see how this starts again against Xiaoxu. Just seeing the angle, seeing the understanding. He does a really good job to buffer a lot of this damage, but with the ultimate, with the CC chain coming down, the all-out going through as well on the Zehen, it's just all lockdown. And unfortunately for Jiejie, because he was in there doing so much damage, Gala goes, well, I'll just take that 1-for-1 trade. Gala's sneakily starting to get online. Remember, once we start hitting that 4th or 5th item, Caitlyn comes back online, and that becomes a big problem for Weibo to deal with because of her range.
Yeah, blink and you'll miss it type scenario with the knock-up coming through from the Talia. Never stood a chance with all that damage. 3 items, has that extra range on auto attacks. Whenever you get kills, you're going to get extra range on the Hex Optics. such a potent combo, Hex Optics, Rapid Fire Cannon. So
Yeah.
we'll see if Gala's going to be able to take the team home. He is going to be the big carry for this game, as we highlighted earlier. Is getting closer and closer to that mark. Late game Caitlyn is such a joy to play when you're an AD carry, and such a pain in the ass to play against when you're on the other team.
Well, especially for this comp, because who exactly is, like, dealing with late-game Caitlyn? It's a Realm Warp onto the backline, and you're hoping you can stun her up. Jace is like, yeah, I can throw out some Shock Blast, but she outranges me at the end of the game. There's not a ton I can do to consistently be able to break her down once she starts hitting those real big damage thresholds. So it is really important for you to find those engages. Very possible for Weibo to do that. I don't want to count them out of this game at all. That Nico is going to be crucial. The Hank has had a rough start to the game. You find those Pop Blossoms onto priority targets, the game is entirely up in the air. And plenty of damage to be able to deal with them. It's just really going to be interesting to see how they play it out. Just over a minute on this dragon spawning. Soul point for both of these teams. They both very much want to set up around here.
Listen, send a Hank in on a Realm Warp. He doesn't have his flash available right now. So if you got to get him into the team fight one way, you get him into the team fight that way. And if you do that, and it looks like obvious bait, that's a great way to buy a lot of space. And JDG will be like, guys, this could be Nico. We should run away here. And you space in a can. It's great.
Exactly. Hey, if you're saying, oh god, there's a Realm Warp behind us, and all of a sudden there's a Shock Blast in front of us, you've got to pick. Pick your poison as JDG.
Here's that Realm Warp.
We're in danger.
It's not going to have the Nico in it, but it's going to cut off Gala. Zika's got to this back line, but they're looking to do a lot of damage to him. With the nice all out there to avoid the impale. Weaver's Wall's there, but Xiaohu got to the back line. They're trying to stop him. Gala's low. Gala's dead. Weibo Gaming blow up the back line. Xiaohu's got some shielding, and he's got a double kill. Weibo Gaming win the other side of the fight with Jiejie and Elk, and they get a 4-0. Dragon coming up, but they say, no, no, no. We want the Baron.
The Spring Tiger has awoken. Xiaohu has been so dominant over the past couple of series. He was my player of the week for week 6, and he is stepping up again here. We were wondering, when is that Realm Warp going to be used aggressively? When are they going to be able to get things on the map for it? Well, here is your answer. This looks like an okay fight for Weibo Gaming to start off. Gala is completely isolated, but Vampire with a phenomenal portal to get Gala right to the rest of his team. The Flash keeps him safe as well, and now it looks like it's actually the Cassante who is overextended, but keep an eye on Xiaohu and the flank that he has in this fight. The flash, the damage, it all comes down on top of the primary carry for JDG. Once he takes down the Caitlyn, the one auto attack threat, watch the happy feet, watch the dancing that goes on. Barely any of this Talia damage is going to come through. The shielding coming down as well now that those 2 items are completed. It's beautiful stuff. Xiaohu just dominating at the back end of that team fight. The Rise coming in clutch, and it really makes you question, was it worth giving over in draft for what you got? Because it's a 5k gold lead now.
And HongQ just had nothing to throw at Xiaohu, but now we are fighting over the dragon once again. This is not the greatest use of Weibo's Baron. I'll see if JDG want to go fight again. This is a team that is always willing to do so. Gala took a big shock blast to the mouth, so he's down to about half HP. Still not on his 4th item yet. JDG will back off. Weibo Gaming go to Soul Point.
Yeah, this is very dangerous now. The one thing JDG couldn't allow to happen, happened. They got mispositioned and out-pressured towards the river. One of the things we had been talking about, the point that I had been driving home and being really annoying about all game long, was that Weibo will win if they get pressure over the river. They did exactly that in such a pivotal fight. For them to continue to push forward with this Baron buff, they're going to need to keep that pressure up. The Leo wall is going to get dropped to at least stop some of the pressure for now, but you still have a minute and a half on this Baron buff. How much can they get?
And this gold lead is 6,000 and growing. Xiaohu, not a very large gold lead in the mid lane, but is doing very well for himself. 3 items, has that actualizer. You saw that damage that he did in the last team fight. He's going to continue to deal large amounts of damage. Shock Blast landing on priority targets. Xiaoxu down to half HP, and he knows that he can't stick around. This Baron Siege is so impossible to play against.
It's really tough to be able to deal with the range now. The problem for Gala is that you needed to wait for him to get online. He's been so excellent throughout this series, but he no longer has the ability to have that range advantage because of just the fact that you're going to get pressured out so much from the post. That damage is really coming through. Zika taking that mid lane tier 2. They are utilizing this Baron buff incredibly efficiently. I imagine they will look for this inhibitor turret and then back off after that. 45 seconds left on the Baron buff.
Still getting lower. Nice buffer there with the flash out of Elk. Tempered Fate lands onto the Hank. They got a lot of damage on him. He's forced to flash away, but they cannot take him down.
Yeah, Xiaoxu burns his flash there to look for an engage, but it's an even better disengage from Weibo. Their carries are all at full health. They really want this turret, but I just don't think they have the wave to actually get this done. They have to back off. It is a good defend here from JDG to keep their base from getting broken open, but I mean, that's a consolation prize at best. This is an absolutely massive swing for Weibo. And I want to make it clear, they have a very tough comp to execute on. You need to make sure that these engages go well, because you're relying so much on Jace damage in the later part of the game, which is not a consistent way to win, especially after a lot of the changes to Jace and the way that he functions in the jungle. It has really come from them playing these fights better, getting their exact setups. Every comp that has ever been drafted in professional League of Legends has a way to win the game. Weibo found theirs and executed it super well to get this big lead.
The game is not over yet because Gala may have something to say about it. Starting to get closer and closer. This fourth item should be completed on his recall. His jungler picked up Bandle Pipes for him. He actually doesn't have his item completed. He should very soon, and he's going to need it for one of these next two fights, whether it be at the Dragon or the Baron. But a lot of support around him. That Mikhail's, as mentioned, that Bandle Pipes. If a Vampire can hit a clutch Tempered Fate, all of a sudden, JDG can leverage the strength of their AD carry to get back in this game and win a fight.
Yeah, it's just... it's tough. You have to imagine a way back in. This is where Weibo thrive. I mean, we memed about it the entire series. Weibo Game 3 is coming real here. They attempt to try and burst this down. Doesn't look like they're going to overstep and make a mistake. They can't really afford to do that here. About 2 minutes on both Dragon and Baron. That is likely going to be a game-winning objective for Weibo. Both of them are game-winning objectives. Baron would be enough to break open the base. They're looking for the fight here, potentially.
It looked like he went after Elk with that Impale, but he shifted away, and I mean, again, you mentioned it earlier, not exactly the target you want to go after. Now Xiaohu is going to be able to get a brick on that turret. The Tempered Fate will counteract the Realm Warp, but this means that the rest of Weibo are able to take top tier 2.
Again, it's super clinical. It's super clean. By the way, JunJia burning flash and ult for that play onto Elk, and it's really just a desperation play at this point. That's so many resources thrown before this Baron/Dragon fight ends up coming up, and just about a minute here, but I just want to praise Weibo for just a second. I was pretty critical of their early game because this felt like a team that needed to get on the board early, or else things were going to get more difficult, and that was correct. They just understood exactly the timer they needed to strike on. They didn't want to overstep in some bad situations, eventually found their avenue back into the game. Really got themselves into a good spot. They have been the masters of Game 3. This is their 8th Game 3 across this split. We talked about that more than any other team in the LPL. They are comfortable in these scenarios. They have been clutch in these late game team fights, and for now, they basically just need one more around this Dragon to potentially end the game in 30 seconds. This comp needs river control, and that's exactly what they're getting right now.
They struggled with it earlier in the game, but now it is all theirs. And now JDG have to walk in. It's been big problems before. Gala has to be incredibly careful. Vampire has already lost half of his HP. Luckily going to be able to pick up some Empowered Honey Fruit to get a little bit closer. JDG just does not have the poke to respond. Gala, 4 items again, ready to go. Ezreal doing good damage, but let's see if they fall for it one more time. He is on vision, but Gala's so low. We'll use the ace in the hole. So Xiaohu is well aware that he was on vision. He'll have to look for another angle, but is it actually going to matter? Because now Elk's poke is doing so much. Weaver's Wall to cut off multiple members here as the Dragon's down to 3,000 HP, but Gala's not actually hitting it. And he's going to target out Zika. Flash over on the side. Here comes the Hank, driving away 3 members of JDG. On the backside, Grim Deliverance, but the Realm Warp gets them all out, and Weibo Gaming collapse on the backside one more time. Teleports into the mid lane, and Weibo Gaming have just upset JDG.
Weibo Gaming stamp their spot as a true playoff contender, once again peaking at the exact right time. They take down one of the best teams in the league, a team that's been white hot over the past couple of weeks, and really prove that if you're going into the end of a split and you're not thinking of Weibo, then you're not thinking of the right teams.
A phenomenal final fight out of Elk, especially 0-1 and 8. The scoreline does not tell the work that he put in. So many Ezreal Qs softening up JDG for the killing blow to be landed by the rest of the squad. 11 kills to 6, a slow burn for the Way Bros. But now sitting at 6 and 8 can rise up in the standings.
And rise up, they will. I mean, they put themselves in a really good spot now. Now, obviously, things need to go their way. NIP need to lose to WE. That's a big ask, and you're looking at an IG team that's taking on JDG.
Is it actually?
It might not be. WE have been so much better as of late. I know NIP are, you know, kind of white hot right now. We're talking about a team that just took down Top Esports as well, so we don't want to discount them and their ability to win big games, but it's possible for Weibo to find that avenue back in, and I really just want to highlight Weibo. This team is on a hot streak right now. They've beaten, in the last 3 series, they have beaten JDG, NIP, and WE. Like, this team is really doing well. They beat Top Esports a couple of weeks ago as well. If you're counting out Weibo from actually being a potential top 5 team in terms of results that can go on a similar run, I think you are discounting what this team has actually accomplished over the past couple of series.
If you're ever counting out Weibo, you haven't been here long enough, because this is a team that I have counted out on multiple occasions dating back to last year, and somehow, some way, they always find a way to go and take a victory like they did here today, Kman. Wow, what a series. Again, that last game wasn't the most exciting, but it was really encouraging to watch Weibo play a nice, controlled, calm game of League of Legends. Sometimes when we get to see that out of LPL teams that are traditionally pretty bloodthirsty, it is a refreshing change of pace knowing that they can play so many different styles.
It's really, really cool to watch. Honestly, like, I'm just encouraged. I'm very, very encouraged. Again, I know I've said it a couple of times. Xiaohu has been on fire over the past couple of weeks, and, you know, I've gone to bat for Xiaohu in a lot of different areas throughout multiple different years. I've voted for him for All-Pro. I've been teased by a lot of the other casters that I'm the Xiaohu guy, the Xiaohu defender. Every single split, we get the same conversation, which is everybody remembers the bad games. They remember the ones where he makes a massive mistake and, you know, goes down in gold early on in a game. And 80-ish% of the games he plays, he is an incredibly valuable mid laner. Is he consistent? Absolutely not. Can he make a massive impact on a series as a whole? Absolutely. He was better than HongQ today. He just straight up was in basically every avenue. Dominated the laning phase in the first 2 games and then had a much bigger impact with his global ultimate in game number 3. This was an elite performance, and if you're adding that on to a team that has Elk, who is yet to really even get to his potential. You know, you have Zika on the top side who can have some great games. Jiejie, who's been fantastic, had some unbelievable smites and will probably be the player of the match here, player of the series for Weibo. I mean, you're actually looking at one of the scariest rosters in the LPL.
No doubt about it. If they can get the HongQ up to speed for the playoff run, as long as you do it by the time you're in lower bracket, if that happens, you know, obviously they could just win out and never drop a game in the playoffs. I think that's unlikely, but it's something that could happen. But if you're able to get them up to speed by that time and really hit your stride and get Elk back to that split 1 form, all of a sudden, a lot of danger coming out of Weibo. And that's why Weibo has been so dangerous as a whole, just because they have really good players that can pop off at any time, even if they're not playing to their peak, right? Even if it's like, they're mired in a slump, like split 2 Elk, Keck W. He can still pop off every now and again. Xiaohu hasn't been on an all-pro team since 2023. Xiaohu showed the young buck what was up. The old head Uncle Druid on him, knocked that 3 down, and listen, took out, honestly, one of the hottest mid laners in the LPL here in Split 2.
I did not expect the Uncle Drew reference in 2026. Major shout out there, Yanni. Great poll. But you're right. I mean, Xiaohu's been on fire over the past couple of weeks. You know, we're going to talk about JDG in just a second, but like, this is one of those series where it's just how much faith do you want to put in Weibo and how much do you want to take away from JDG? I'm taking this more as a positive for Weibo than I am as a negative for JDG. Again, we'll discuss that, I think, hopefully in just a second as we maybe talk more about the outlook of JDG moving forward, but just so proud of Weibo for being able to recoup and rebound. This team's mental looked like it was completely destroyed for parts of this split. And, you know, we were talking about them as a team where, you know, at the beginning of the first half split, we're like, are they going to even beat some Group Nirvana teams to get into the playoffs? Like, there were genuine questions on broadcast being asked of that. I think that's long gone. This team now is a team that I'm looking at and going, okay, like, can you win your first round series? If you draw AL or JDG or, you know, Top Esports, can you beat that team and actually get yourself an upper bracket round 2? That seems more likely at this point.
Questions have been answered, Kman, and I think that in general, the playoffs are a lot more fun when teams in the bottom half, you can say definitively they can take games off of teams in the top half, right? You know, for a while, you could say that about NIP, Weibo, say that about now. IG, jury's still out. They had a really hot start, haven't been so good since then. Team WE, winning individual games against some top teams. Like, things are more fun when you can have any potential upsets come through. Let's go ahead and talk game, because for all the damage that Jiejie did, Elk did that and then some. I have a really tough time trying to determine who's going to be MVP for this game. Elk didn't have the stat line to back it up. Xiaohu had some clutch realm warps. That last fight really belonged to Elk. Jiejie's poke throughout the game. I don't know. Kman, I'm leaning towards Xiaohu. What are your thoughts?
I would personally go for Xiaohu as well. I think he made the biggest moments in this game. I don't think there's a question on who player of the series is. That is Jiejie. I think he created the most for the team across the entire series, but you can't go wrong with Jiejie. You can't go wrong with Xiaohu. Elk as well. I know the KDA isn't very good, 0, 1, and 8. Obviously, the damage is very real on the Ezreal, but more importantly, the psychological warfare. How many times did we see JunJia try to burn and engage on the Ezreal? Like, that changed so much of the game. Like, the Skarner was, mind controlled into going after this Ezreal in so many different fights, and that actively was so important. The fact that Elk was able to get out of a lot of these instances created situations where the Ryze and where the Jace could pop off a little bit more. So, overall, I think all three of them had excellent games, all things considered. I'd go for Xiaohu on the Ryze because I think the one fight that you're really looking at that broke open the game was won by the Ryze, but really, I don't think you can go wrong here. I mean, Jace had like a 4K gold lead 20 minutes into the game.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I'm with you on the JJ player of the match, Kman. So, let's go talk about what this means for JDG. Game 3, not really too crazy that they lost. It felt like the Weibo Gaming comp was better. Game 1 is the game that I'm really concerned about, because this really could have been a 2-0 series if they either had a little bit more setup for HongQ in that first game, or if HongQ just simply played better in that first game.
I agree. I think that game 1 was concerning. I think HongQ ended up misexecuting. I still think their draft in game 1 is bad, right? Like, I still think that it's hard to play.
Yeah.
I think their game 1 draft is worse than their game 3 draft. I think game 3 had too much engage and not enough damage. Game 1 had too much damage and not enough engage. They never really found that good balance throughout this series when they were looking at a lot of these comps. But I want to pump the brakes on JDG worry. That's going to be the main, I think, thing to come out of this is, oh my god, are JDG cooked? Are they actually one of the top teams? They beat AL and top esports last week. Like, yeah. I don't want to sit here and, like, say that have a JDG is over party or anything like that. Like, JDG is fine. We're going to be okay. You can lose one series. You just have to be able to rebound, and I'm not going to overreact to them dropping to a white-hot Weibo team that, again, has won 4 series in a row at this point. They've been fantastic. They're still in a spot where they are going to be one of those top 4 seeds. They're not going to have to play their way into playoffs. The only unfortunate thing is now they have the same record as TES and AL going into these final couple games, which makes it so interesting that all of them play once more, and that will basically determine what seeding 2 through 4 looks like.
Yeah, and I think the worst part is it's going to be hard to get seed 2 at this point, because you're